Most polls show Donald Trump leading in the swing states, but the Democratic Party strategist Simon Rosenberg believes the president's chances are better than the surveys suggest. This is a good insight into understanding where the fuck the Democrats are coming from. The mania of it all. President Biden is trailing Donald Trump by 1 point in national polls. The gap is larger in most of the so-called swing states, including Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada. 7% in Nevada. Moreover, in both 2016 and 2020, most polls ended up understating Trump's support. This year, the head-to-head polls and Biden's unpopularity have made many Democrats anxious about the coming election. One of the most prominent Democrats who seem to share Biden's sense of optimism is Simon Rosenberg, a longtime strategist for the party who runs the Substack Hopium Chronicles and who is known to share good polls and good vibes with his audience on Twitter. During our conversation, we discussed Trump's polling numbers, blah, blah, blah. A lot of Democrats and libs are worried about the state of presidential race. You seem to have a different take. I think there has been a tendency in recent years among commentators to overestimate the strength of Republicans and underestimate our strength. And we saw that play out in 2022. Oh my God, they keep going back to 2022. As another member said, our contracts are insanely complicated, but after the whole ordeal at BNSF, we got 5 paid sick days with the ability to convert 3 more paid days off into sick days. And at BNSF with the rest of cycles now, which gives us ample time off now. I'm loving our new rest cycles, which makes it feel like we have a life now and our undeniable paid sick time off. Yeah. What is this? Does Trump winning endanger trans people? Please don't laugh. I'm being serious. I'm scared for trans people. It's understandable to be scared for trans people, considering that the Republicans have already completely sidestepped legislation at the congressional level and are enacting their evil agenda against trans people and many other forms of civil liberties that they're restricting at the state level. They're utilizing the state legislature currently as it stands. There's been more anti-trans legislation that is passed under the Biden administration in the past 4 years than ever before. The fundamental dynamic of our politics since the spring of 2022 has been consistent Democratic overperformance and consistent Republican underperformance. Yeah, Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade. Yeah, and this has been particularly true after Dobbs. The whole political landscape in America changed fundamentally with Dobbs. This is true. Damn, Edgar Mentum is writing for The Nation now? That's crazy. Who let this guy write? Anyway, you're definitely right that various commentators were wrong about 2022, but broadly speaking, the polls were pretty accurate. No, that's not true. That's not true. I mean, we have to stop. People have to stop saying that. The real clear politics final map for the Senate was 54 seats to the Republicans based on averages. The actual projection was 53 seats. This is from 538. Despite a loud chorus of naysayers, they're not correct. Hold on, let me finish reading. Despite a loud chorus of naysayers claiming that the polls were either underestimating Democratic support or biased yet again against Republicans, the polls were more accurate in 2022 than in any cycle since at least 1998, with almost no bias towards either party. They're wrong about that. I mean, they're just wrong. They're wrong. I mean, I'm presenting you with facts. How in the world could polling averages be correct if they ended up with 54 seats in the Senate? Some of the Senate races were perceived to be close. The Democrats won those races when some people thought Republicans were going to narrowly win them. No, but what 538 wrote is not true, and I have clear definitive proof. The The entire political commentary in the final month before the election settled on the red wave. Shane Goldmeyer wrote in the New York Times, I was mocked and attacked by Nate Silver, by Dave Wasserman, and by all these other folks. Part of the reason I got the election right when almost nobody else did was that I separated out the Republican heavy polling from the independent polling. And what we saw consistently is that in independent polling, the election looked close and competitive. He's literally just repeating what 538's analysis was. I hate to hand it to 538, but it's crazy. He's saying exactly what the fuck? As 538 makes clear in their piece, while the polls in a few closely watched races like Arizona's governorship and Pennsylvania's Senate seat were biased towards Republicans, the polls overall still had a bit of bias towards Democrats. That's because generic ballot polls, the most common type of poll last cycle, had a weighted average bias of D plus 1.9. And the polls of several less closely watched races like the governorship in Ohio and Florida also skewed towards Democrats. I'm ending the interview. I'm ending the interview because what you're doing is ridiculous. Wait, why? And I don't care. What you're saying is not true, and I don't care. I know that what 538 wrote. I live this every day. And so the point is what you're saying is wrong. I'm on the record saying what 538 has written was incorrect, and I've given you definitive proof otherwise. So if you want to keep coming back at this, do it. But this has become one of the most ridiculous interviews that I've ever done in my entire professional career. Totally fair. Can I ask you a different question? Yes. I saw you said Trump to me is a much weaker candidate than he was in 2016 and 2020. Can you talk more about that? Much weaker. So I think, first of all, his performance on the stump is far more degraded. He's clearly diminished. He's far more erratic. He's making a lot of mistakes that are hurting the campaign when he speaks. Second, his agenda is far more extreme, more dangerous, and will be far easier to exploit by the Democrats. According to a CNN poll in April, 55% of Americans say that they think Trump's presidency was a success. Compare that with 2020 when his job approval was around 44% on election day. In November 2016, his favorability rating was 34% in Gallup. Now his favorability rating is in the low 40s. Right, so the assumption with everything I'm telling you is that what I believe is going to happen is the campaign and prosecuted over the next 5.5 months. There are 6 things now that are true about him that were not true in 2020. That all voters are going to come to know in the following months. They are that he raped E. Jean Carroll in the department store dressing room, that he foresaw one of the largest financial frauds in American history, and he's been fined hundreds of millions of dollars for that he stole American... Okay, literally these 2 things right off the jump are objectively correct, and yet Americans already know and don't give a shit. No one cares about that. So he's wrong on the 2 out of the 6. That he stole American secrets. He lied to the FBI. Don't know if they care about that as much either. He shared those secrets with other people. It is the... Okay, that... Again, I don't know if he means Kid Rock and shit. Is the greatest betrayal of our national security by our former president in all of American history. He's like, listen, you don't understand. You don't understand. Everyone is as libbed up as I am. His answer is, you don't get it. The American population is just as fucking horny as I am, okay? You don't understand the level of libbed upness that the average American median voter is going to experience. Literally, by magic, it seems. By some unforeseen magical reason, they are going to overnight start caring about the shit that they very objectively know. And I have openly shown you that they don't care about. The only thing that I will agree with, and I haven't even gotten to that part of the argument yet, is that Trump is seen as a corrupt, chaotic individual. That is a massive negative for him. Okay. That's really, really important. And as I've said time and time again, that Trump constantly being in legal trouble reasserts that narrative. Obviously, his cult will still love him regardless and see him as like a Jesus-like figure who's being unjustly prosecuted. But ultimately, I think those Americans in the margins I think those Americans in the fucking margins do not like that and absolutely consider that to be a bad thing. And the more legal trouble he has, the worse it is for him because people are consistently reminded of that. He led an armed attack on the Capitol and he promised to end American democracy for all if he's in the White House in 2025. He and his family have corruptly taken more money from foreign governments than any family in American history. And sixth, this is really important, is that he's singularly responsible for ending Roe. That's it. It's just that last part is the most important part. But this is what a campaign is for. This is what a campaign does. He already led that insurrection. His favorability rating is back now above where it was in the past. I know you can say that the campaign will deal with some of his stuff, but perhaps it will. But how do you understand these numbers? It is my belief when you prosecute all those things and establish a basic idea that Joe Biden has been a good president and the country is better off, which is manifestly true, that in the prosecution of all this, Trump will fall down and we will win. Oh my God. All right, watch out. So he just thinks that like everything that has currently happened in the past will magically be important for everyone. Even though I'm demonstrating that it currently doesn't seem like it. We are going to come up with the best Aaron Sorkin speech of all time. We are going to come up with the best Aaron Sorkin speech of all time, and it's going to magically make everybody care. One of the places you could prosecute this case with the largest audience would be debates. The Biden White House only wanted to do 2 debates, not the customary 3. I think it was Trump that made the decision not to do 2 debates, was it? No. In 2020, he established a precedent of 2 debates. There were 3 agreed upon debates in 2020, but one was canceled after Trump got COVID. Biden can still ask for more than 2 debates this time. I know, but they asked for 2 and Trump agreed. And I think that was smart. About this was the first. It was unclear that he was going to accept any debates, regardless of what he was saying. Our theory of the case is that he's more informed. Oh, God, debates don't even fucking matter all that much. Are you talking about the so-called zombie vote? Yeah, Republicans have had to go vote in these primaries, and a large number are not choosing him, right? They're not choosing MAGA. A big chunk of the Republican coalition became loosened. We're seeing that play out in the Republican primary. You're also seeing it within the unprecedented rebellion against Trump happening among Republican leaders. There are 2 Republican former vice presidents, Dick Cheney and Mike Pence, who are not supporting Trump. Oh, dude, yeah. Yeah, you're right. The modern Republican voter definitely is always like, man, I fucking love Dick Cheney. Yeah, the guys who literally wanted to kill Mike Pence are thinking, fuck, man, Mike Pence is not supporting Trump. I don't know. I'm really going to have to reconsider my stance here. Bro, Trump ran against the Iraq war. What the fuck is this guy on? Is he snorting crack cocaine? Whose war was that? That was Dick Cheney's war. I'm sorry, this is giving cult. This is Blue Anon. The Times did something on the so-called zombie vote in the presidential primaries and found that 19% of Republican primary voters were still voting against Trump. But that's a smaller percentage than in any other Republican or Democratic primary in the past 24 years. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. None of it matters? No. What matters is this election. In this election, you have this combination. You have an unprecedented set of circumstances where the Republican coalition is splintered. Now you have Mitt Romney going on TV consistently telling Republicans not to vote for Trump. We've never seen anything like this. And I think it would be dangerous for commentators who in 2022 got the election so wrong to dismiss what we're seeing. Yeah. You don't understand. Dude, this is... Oh... Bro, what are we doing? Like, I've never seen somebody cope this fucking hard. He is maxed out, overdosing on copium. This is what happens when your brain is busted from just only reading New York Times, Never Trump Republican op-ed pieces and only watching MSNBC. This is nothing like 2016, not on this scale. 2 former vice presidents. This is nothing like what happened in 2016. No, there were more people in 2016 that actually were anti-Trump. Shut the fuck up. That's crazy. How is this guy who worked with Hillary Clinton in 2016 literally relitigating the same exact fucking same exact mania that caused that caused the Hillary campaign to lose in 2024? I'm losing it. Kaya, get out. Get away. Your tail is going to get stuck under my chair. One video before Batman, 3-month-long prank on congressman who cursed the AOC. No, I'm not going to watch that right now. Bro, he thinks that Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, Mike Pence, and Dick Cheney are moving the fucking needle. Let me tell you something, okay? You know what would actually move the needle in a Republican Party? If Tucker Carlson came out against Trump. It's not going to happen. Or if Fox News started cutting anti-Trump propaganda. That would be infinitely more impactful than fucking Mitt Romney, dude. Yeah, or David Duke. Yeah, literally. George W. Bush didn't support Trump's re-election. Let's see what he does this time. Just to clarify from before, NBC did invite Trump and Biden in a third debate with Telemundo. The Trump campaign said yes, and the Biden campaign said no. Just to clarify that. That's fine. Okay, it is confusing given that they want to prosecute this case, and this is the rare time that you get to prosecute this case. I think you should direct that question to them. Well, part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you is that, according to Axios, the Biden campaign doesn't believe they're behind, and Biden himself doesn't believe he's behind. I don't think they're behind. Maybe a little bit of my concern is that suggests that you don't need a new strategy. You don't need to do anything else if you think you're ahead. And that's sort of what I wanted to talk to you about. No. But what I said repeatedly, and what I write every day, and I even did that piece last week saying that the election is close, neither candidate is ahead or behind. I think it will be a close election. But at the same time, as you've said, this guy tried to launch an insurrection, has all these awful things behind him. Are you telling me anything I don't know right now? And now he's running against a president who has very low approval ratings, despite you saying he's been a great president. I understand all this. I think that given that you're a journalist, you can distinguish between what is true and what people believe. And these are not the same things, right? Wait, what? Dude, are you fucking stupid? Elections are not conducted on what is true. It's vibes based. What are we doing here? This is the most insane thing that like, this basically is a snapshot of exactly how Democratic Party wonks operate. Their strategy is exactly the opposite of Trump, who is a fucking room reader, incompetent, corrupt, and violent overall, but a room reader nonetheless. These guys refuse to read the room. What the fuck? Exactly. That's why I'm so concerned, because I'm afraid what people believe in what's true are different. And that's what makes me very worried, and why I think that perhaps the White House should be thinking differently about this election. Bro, this attitude is exactly the reason why these fucking dumbasses don't think they need to campaign. This is crazy. Well, this also paired up with the reality that that Joe Biden can't really campaign anyway. In all the Senate polling, our numbers are holding. In the House polling, the limited House polling that we have, things are looking very encouraging. Yeah, it almost suggests people just don't like the incumbent president, which is true. It's not that the people hate the Democratic Party. They don't. The Democratic Party is actually performing very well. I've shown you the polls, chat. If you recall, I've shown you the polls where Democrats are winning by like 10 points on Senate seats in the very same fucking polls where Joe Biden is losing to Trump in the same states. That should be ringing massive alarm bells in a presidential election. Normally, the president carries the ballot, and damn ballot voters actually end up bringing victory to the Democratic Party candidates that are sitting on those Senate seats. It is crazy. The reverse happening is unique. Well, right. So structurally, the generic has moved in our direction, and we're now consistently in a positive territory. There's a serious poll that's coming out in North Carolina, consistent with many other polls that have been done in North Carolina, showing that the race is within 2 points. So I think that the point I'm making is that my basic assessment is that I would much rather be us than them. Oh, Trump is ahead by 6.5 points in North Carolina. This is an example of my concern about the way you're talking about this. I said there's a poll coming out. You said that it was also like the other polls from North Carolina. No, forget the averages. Forget the averages. If you look at the averages, you're going to be misled. You're going to be misled about what's happening. I explained earlier. Yeah, his argument is like, don't look at the averages. Don't look at the polls. Only look at the direction of the polls. Okay? Something that we've heard from other Biden campaign defenders, which is that it's looking better. I explained earlier what happened in 2022. The averages were wrong. You have talked a lot about bad Republican polls. In this cycle, some of Biden's very bad numbers have been from really good polls such as Ann Seltzer at Grinnell and Nate Cohn at the New York Times. How do you understand that? That's normal. It's normal that there's a wide range of polling. Yeah, these guys should actually keep shitting on the pollsters instead of fucking getting to work, dude. That's right. It's actually the pollsters that are wrong. It's actually the American population and the vibes-based way that like they actually end up voting that's wrong. Every American should magically come to the conclusion that Biden has done a phenomenal job. Do not believe your lying eyes. Don't worry about the fucking insane cost of living, okay? Don't think about that. That's all bullshit. Think about the jobs. There's so many new jobs, so many new availabilities for jobs. What the fuck? You previously said on a podcast that in March, the likely scenario at this point is that Biden's up by 2 to 3 points by early May as the Democratic coalition begins to come home. What has happened is that Biden's numbers have moved up. We are in better shape than we were in early March. What we have to get beyond is the idea that there's an actual number where there's certainty about the race. That is fool's gold. Wow. Then that's it. That's the end of the fucking conversation. That's really good. Here's Edinger Mentum and writing in The Nation saying that don't believe the pundits. Gaza is a political disaster for Biden. Some observers say the war isn't that big of a deal in the 2024 campaign. Here's why they're so wrong. If you think, okay, if you look at not polls, but actual primary votes, okay? If you look at actual primary votes, no, I already covered this part. So we can just disregard 538 then, right? I don't necessarily look at just polls, okay? I don't just look at polls. I think polls are good to see as close to an accurate snapshot of what the fuck's going on. Okay? But there's something that's more important than polls. Okay? And that is elections. Primary elections, to be exact. And if you look at the primary elections where the most reliable voters of each individual party go out to vote. And in those very same primary elections, higher numbers of likely Democratic Party voters are voting uncommitted in comparison to the margins that Joe Biden won in those very same states. Voting uncommitted specifically because of Gaza, okay, you are fucking insane if you think personally that that is not indicative of a massive, glaringly obvious political failure that's coming down come November. I say this as someone who regularly, albeit begrudgingly, will talk about electoral politics. I say this as someone who's been professionally covering elections for almost a decade. If you think that the uncommitted voting campaign is not a genuinely terrifying prospect for the Biden campaign, you have to be doing the amount of copium that fucking Democratic Party strategist is on. Okay? No matter how many people say, oh, the polls actually show that the number one thing that people don't care about, the number one thing that people care about is actually not Gaza. It's actually inflation, which is true. Okay? It is true. People consistently say that the cost of living is too high, which of course means like rent as well for the most part. And that's precisely the reason why the very notion that you can try to get inflation under control with monetary policy is a little ridiculous and hasn't fully come into play. But beyond that, if you think that Gaza specifically is not going to deliver an L for Biden in very important states, I don't know what to tell you. Okay? Among all the other members of the party, the president stands alone in the degree of his complicity in Israel's morally indefensible and increasingly unpopular campaign. He's refused to meaningfully distance himself from the conflict, even as the death toll has mounted to unimaginable highs, and horrific accounts of Israeli abuse lead daily headlines. As the story goes, this has caused support among Democratic young voters and voters of color, two core Democratic constituencies, to plummet far below both historic norms and the numbers managed by down-ballot Democrats allowing Trump to pull ahead. It all adds another degree of urgency to something people already wanted, an end to the war. Stop Netanyahu, it is said, and he will save not only countless lives, but also a presidency and, by extension, American democracy itself. Some, however, have pushed back against this interpretation, pointing at the issue polling, showing that young voters and voters of color place a higher priority on domestic issues than on Israel. They argue that the idea that the Democratic base is abandoning Biden over his Gaza policies is more conjecture than proven fact. To them, the focus on Gaza as the source of the president's woes is yet another example of an insular, overeducated leftist media clique mistaking the opinions of their friends for the country at large. To the extent that they acknowledge that the war is impacting the election at all, they can say that Biden's chosen course was the best one, politically speaking. Which one of the views is most correct? It depends on who you're asking. If you're trying to determine how much broad American public cares about the specifics of Biden's Israel policy, you'll probably side with the second camp. It is undeniable that the Israel policy doesn't carry the same electoral weight as, say, immigration or the economy. This is true. That's not too surprising. Americans only rarely place any foreign policy issues at the top of their agendas, and when they do, those issues almost always directly involve U.S. troops. Yet the larger claim from the leftist or out-of-touch camp that Gaza has had minimal effect on the election could not be more wrong. I assume that what he's going to say is Biden is already unpopular, so anything that contributes to his unpopularity is going to be more harmful than the average candidate. And to that I say he's absolutely right if he says that. Because the reality of the matter is, if Biden was fucking cooking right now, if his popularity before October 7 was high, right? And people were like, man, I fucking love what Biden did. Then yeah, nobody would give a shit about Gaza. And by that, I mean like nobody would give enough of a shit about Gaza that they would turn around and go, I'm not voting for Biden. Okay? Problem is, everybody already hated Biden before Gaza. Everybody already hated Biden. He was historically unpopular, trailing below 30% approval rating before October 7. So the idea that like any little thing is just inconsequential and we shouldn't worry about it is just simply not even short-term thinking, in my opinion. It's just a very cynical way to try and avoid talking about Gaza because they just want America to do whatever the fuck America is going to do in Gaza. Okay? It's not even short-term thinking. I think it is a cynical way to try and move the conversation away and start talking about the election, stupid. I think that's what it is. As bad as some aspects of the economy have been under Biden, and as much as people dislike his handling of it, it was not the reason why his approval first plummeted. It's not even close to the worst issue right now. The true culprit behind Biden's struggles has been his foreign policy record. It's true. As strange as it is to think about, the Biden of 2020, wait, what? Did have something of an aura about him. The idea of an elder statesman capable of managing America's role in the world in a way that Trump never could. This conception defined every aspect of his public persona. It made him popular, more so than most of his party. It made him trustworthy. It arguably made him president. That halo is long gone, and it wasn't the economy that began to destroy it. It was the collapse of the Afghanistan government in August 2021. As I put it in an article from April last year arguing that Biden should not run for re-election, it's important not to understate the impact of the Afghan government's collapse. It not only handed Biden the ignominious honor of presiding over the end of a lost war, but it shattered the very mystique that won him the presidency in 2020. The idea of Biden as an experienced, competent statesman. He hasn't been able to rebuild that mystique after a year and a half. And it's very much worth considering that he may not be able to. It's very hard to put that sort of genie back in the bottle. In this light, the start of another massive foreign policy crisis is one of the worst things that could have ever happened to Biden in the run-up of his election. I think ultimately it all reinforces the notion that Biden is asleep in the wheel. That's what I think. And I think that's his least popular aspect. I think people don't think about it that deeply. He's supposed to be a competent leader, much better than Donald Trump in that regard. And he just keeps consistently showing everyone in America and the rest of the world that the government is currently on autopilot and that he's actually unimaginably, without a shred of doubt, asleep on the fucking wheel. Oh, never mind. He literally does say that in the next sentence. Sorry. Okay, my bad. It reinforced the most damaging perceptions that voters have of him, that he's out of it, in over his head, overtaken by events, and old. It is in this aspect of Biden's political persona that his team has completely dismissed to their peril. As sensitive as they are to every little way in which voters disapprove the economic record, from the number of chips in the Lay's bags on down, they have been unbelievably blasé about the president's weakness regarding foreign policy in general, which, if you believe polling, runs far deeper than almost any other issue, and Gaza in particular. To call this a blind spot would be an understatement. The delusion has reached such extremes that the White House reportedly saw Gaza as an asset that would allow Biden to contrast himself favorably against Trump. Needless to say, it has not been that. That's perhaps the only reason why so many fucking libbed up dipshits regularly talk about how, do you know how much worse Trump would be on Gaza? And it's like, yeah, we do know, dumb fuck. But the reason why we would vote for you is so that you don't do the Trump style things, which you are currently doing. They built a pier and the Gazans stole their aid without waiting in line. What more could be done? Wait, what? Oh, you were lib baiting. Okay, Jesus Christ. I thought you were being fucking serious about the aid thing. I have to maintain this position that if everyone was that fucking frustrated with the Democratic Party's handling of the economy, then Democratic senators wouldn't be overperforming Biden. It's not just that. Okay? Surely the economy is a massive problem. They saw negative growth in real wages for 2 years almost under the 4 years of the Brandon regime. That is not going to go away. That's something that will stay with them forever, especially when considering the fucking cost of living being sky high, especially rent and especially properties in general. Okay? That part, that's only one aspect of this equation. The real problem, sorry. The real problem here is that a dynamic, oh God, what the fuck? a dynamic, younger president would be able to navigate through these problems infinitely better. No, it's not Ziccups. It's not Zin Hiccups. Problem is, he was already unpopular before October 7, and October 7 has certainly not helped, and actually has made people more committed to the idea that Biden is too old and falling asleep on the wheel and too fragile and too weak. As much as a circle may scoff at the idea that people could see him as less reliable than Donald Trump, this perception is real and is sinking him. Assuming it, yeah, that's why like the Gaza shit is so obvious. It's so obviously disastrous for Biden. You want to know why? You want to know why? Because the American population, according to those very same polls, think that Trump would do a better job in Gaza. That's partially because Trump is currently not president and we're very stupid. So obviously we look at the current president and we go, well, that's your fault. And we cannot imagine how much worse things could be, especially because things are really fucking bad right now. But the very same population that is being polled literally sees what Joe Biden is doing is so disastrous that they think Trump would be better. That is an abject failure of communication. And of course, yet another obvious example that people do not like what Biden is doing in Gaza at all. Anyway. And by the way, the worst aspect of this, if you are a diehard Democratic Party loyalist, the worst aspect of this for you, okay, if you don't care about the death and destruction, is that time is running out. Okay? In the next 6 minutes, there will be a 3-minute ad break. And you have to work against that. You have to subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime before time runs out and before you're served a 3-minute ad break. But what I mean by that, all jokes aside, when I say time is running out, is that he has less and less time every day to not only fix the situation, but also show the American population that he has fixed the situation. He has an unimaginably difficult path ahead of him if he wants to convince Americans that he is the elderly statesman that they're voting for, that they voted for last time. Okay? He has to make people literally forget about everything else. Meanwhile, here's yet another glaringly obvious example that his fucking his policies are absolute abject failures. After 5 months of fighting, the Pentagon and Navy admits they are losing the attritional battle. They also admit that Yemen is capable of striking the Mediterranean. Prosperity Guardian mission failed. They have weapons that can reach the Mediterranean, the senior official said. It's definitely a concern that they have that capability. Yemen's Houthis have mounted more than 90 attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden since November, in what the Zaidi Shiite faction has categorized as retaliation for Israel's war in the Gaza Strip. There really is no precedent for the use of anti-ship ballistic missiles the way they are doing it. It's kind of maritime terrorism that the entire world has an interest in seeing brought to a close. In February, the United States and the United Kingdom began a series of air and naval strikes targeting Houthi missiles and drone stockpiles inside of Yemen. Yet U.S. military officials overseeing the campaign admit the attritional approach has its limits, as the U.S. Navy's efforts to interdict Iran's steady supply of precision-guided components of the Houthis have barely made a dent. They admit that they haven't made a dent in their arsenal. Meanwhile, the Navy might be experiencing an SM-2 interceptor shortage as they're looking for funding to recertify their remaining stockpile. Okay, well, if you consider that libs have this going for them, stop. You know what? Fuck it. I didn't want to do this to you. You've been good boys and girls and MBs so far, but it's time. It's time for you to see it. It's time for you to take the pill of arsenic, okay, in the form of content you might not have thought previously. Hasan, liberal content can't possibly kill me. Okay? Guess what? You'd be wrong. It can. I'm giving you a trigger warning right now. What you are about to see is possibly the worst liberal content I've ever shown on this broadcast. And you guys know I've shown you some real bad shit. Like I've shown you the DNC. I've shown you the Imagine music. I've shown you Lin-Manuel Miranda talking about Hillary Clinton, like singing about Hillary Clinton. I've even shown you the DNC song that they did, Hope song, Fight song, whatever. This is going to be worse than all of those things combined. Here it is.
Biden. Skibidi Biden. Skibidi, skibidi Biden. Skibidi Biden. Joe. Skibidi Biden. Hitler's language. Trump is using Hitler's language. Trump is using Hitler's language. Skibidi. Skibbity Biden.